Good afternoon. Welcome everyone to our virtual conference for International Leadership Week 2024. I'm Melanie Robinson. I'm the Deputy CEO for the Institute of Leadership, and with me on screen you can see my colleague Jerome Goodluck, Senior Business Manager. And wow, what an incredible week we've had so far. For the first time, we kicked off International Leadership Week with a hybrid event with 60 guests joining us in person in London at the Westminster. And we also had guests joining us from over 25 different countries, from Mauritius to Australia, from Singapore to South Africa, the Bahamas to the Netherlands, and Hong Kong to Qatar. On Monday, we had 4 incredible speakers. We had Ad Davis from Gymshark, Manisha Morais from Kazuko, Scott Brown from Mila Hotels, and Marina Ibrahim from Globability Coaching. They had a thought-provoking discussion on the power of collaboration and what happens when it isn't running through an organisation. We've also seen individuals and organisations connecting with this really powerful theme of collaboration for success. People have created podcasts and blogs, and some created LinkedIn Lives every day this week. Some organisations had team days, exploring the theme and understanding the importance of collaboration in their workplace. When I was asked what collaboration means to me, I said it's about bringing people together to share skills and ideas to produce innovative outcomes and solutions that are greater than they could achieve on their own. And we're really looking forward to exploring this powerful theme further today. Now, Jerome's going to tell us a little bit more about this event.
Thanks, Mel. And hello, everyone. I'm absolutely thrilled to join you. And what an amazing week, as you mentioned, Mel. It was my absolute privilege to be in London on Monday, and it was just incredible. We really have the best community across the Institute, and that's thanks to all of you. Thank you so much for joining us. I welcome you warmly, and we love the fact that you represent the global community. Please, in the chat, pop in where you're calling from. We love to see that. Now, closed captions have been enabled on the webinar today, and Karen from our events team, you can see screen enabled, will help you in the chat if you need it. We're using a Slido app today for questions and comments with hashtag ILW24, so do populate that app. So what is International Leadership Week? We heard from Mel. Well, it's been running all week, and we had the conference on Monday, and here we are as a community collaborating online at the bookend of what is a working week, where we all come together globally to raise awareness and to promote the importance of effective leadership. And we're continuing the week right through to Sunday. The week highlights the significance of leadership skills, inspiring individuals to develop their abilities and contribute to positive change in their communities, organisations and beyond. And this year, as you heard, we've been emphasising collaboration and the power of collaboration, and our amazing speakers are going to build on that today. We've got 3 speakers, and we have Mahay from Ignite Your Inner Potential, we'll be hearing from first. We've got Keeler from Belbin and Cory from the Superhero Mindset. Now, without delay, our first speaker, Col, is ready to go, and Col is an accomplished senior leader with more than 30 years of experience at the senior level in the police service, and he's recognised as a top leadership and emotional intelligence specialist. Now, Col, you've got extensive experience in cultural diagnosis and transformation, leadership development, executive coaching, conflict resolution, development of executive teams, HR transformation, and serious large-scale investigations, critical major incident command control, contingency planning, right up to the executive level. My word, that's quite a skill set right there, Col. You're regularly called upon to comment on issues around organisational and cultural change, embedding emotional intelligence into organisational practices. And you may have seen him on TV. Col is a skilled TV presenter, often called upon to appear on TV, to add kudos and expertise on a whole manner of subjects. You host a brilliant Unlocking Leadership radio show. Do check it out, as well as your brilliant podcast on human-centered leadership. So let's all join you there as well. But for now, we've got the pleasure of having you in the room. Over to you, Carl.
Well, thank you so much, Jerome. I'm just going to share my screen before I go any further. And I'm still reeling from that incredible introduction there. I think that I need to simplify everything that's been said. I'm old, I've been around a while, and I've learned a lot of lessons in my leadership journey of how I could have been perhaps a better leader back in the day. I have spent, I think, in the region of about 41 years in the area of leadership, starting off as a young 16-year-old in the top left-hand corner, 16-year-old fresh-faced police cadet back in January 1983. And that's when I embarked in the era of leadership and understanding what it is to be a leader. I've learned an awful lot. I've been in charge of critical incidents, major incidents. I've managed large-scale homicide investigations, complex investigations. But I've worked with people, and I've realized that to get to work with people and get the very best out of people, you have to do certain things. But organizational culture in that time has changed. I think we've lived through significant areas in workplace culture, workplace strategy, Jerome. And I think this is where my learning has really come into its own. As I joined in the 1980s, I think we joined in the era of the what. That's how I describe it. So most of the organizational focuses were around things like workplace efficiency, productivity, and output. We were just focused on what are the services that we're providing, and what were the services that we're providing, and how could we produce more, and how could we do it better. So we saw things like lean manufacturing coming into its own, total quality management, and a real emphasis on who does what specifically in the workplace. In the 1990s, however, we entered into what I call the era of the how. This is where organizationally, no matter what your organization you were, we started looking more at how can we do things even better? How can we continuously grow, continuously improve our practices? I'm sorry, my slides seem to be operating of their own at the moment. How can we do things even better? How can we continuously improve? So we saw things in the UK, certainly things like ISO 9001, total quality management systems, Six Sigma methodologies, best value principles. I remember in the police service, we created a whole section, a whole department around best value. It was so big at the time. Value for money, and this whole concept of a continuous improvement with initiatives like Kaizen coming into it. In the noughties, we entered a new era, and here was the era of the why. And in the era of the why, a lot of organizations started to grow a lot more in their understanding in terms of their requirement to impact on the local community. Things like CSR, corporate social responsibility, came into its own, and really organizations wanted to espouse to their potential clients and their users that they have got a sense of purpose behind what they do. So consequently, things like triple bottom line reporting, people, planet, profit, this kind of concept came into its own. There was real emphasis on stakeholder management and transparent communication. When I take it into the context of the police service, we entered into this whole era of measuring confidence and satisfaction rates in the police service. We all remember this famous talk done by Simon Sinek following his book Start With Why, really emphasizing why some organizations such as Apple, and he used Apple as a pivotal organization that really practices this. Some organizations really start with a why, and then they sort of sell the why to their public, and that's why they generate a strong following from their clients. But there's something beyond the why. The world has changed. Something else has gone on. And, you know, We only have to look back into 2020 to see images like this to remind us of the desolation, the isolation that came from COVID-19. On top of that, things that really stretched our thinkings, like the horrific murder of George Floyd over in America. Anxiety, stress became a norm, and people talk about it even now. The exponential increase on diagnoses of things like autism and ADHD have become quite widely known. I was talking at another conference only a few days ago where there was a speaker from representing Generation Z, or Generation Z as the Americans would call it. And he was talking about how you could epitomize Generation Z as the mental health generation. And he says, what I mean by that is that we have an acute awareness of mental health awareness within Gen Z. So I think this is the kind of landscape that we've come out of when we've come out of this horrific experience that we all experienced in 2020. Maslow's hierarchy of needs was something that, a diagram that I kept coming back to, and how it's affected 2020, how it affected things like our psychological needs, the loving and the belonging, and the physiological needs, where people were rushing to supermarkets to empty the shelves of toilet paper. The UK companies lose an estimated 42 billion pounds annually due to low employee morale, often attributed to a lack of emotional intelligence in the workplace. And we've seen this over and over and over again. In the last 3 or 4 years, we have seen new terminology creeping up, like the Great Resignation, like quiet quitting and loud quitting, and unprecedented industrial action in the United Kingdom. So I think we've now entered the era of the who. And working practice have shifted more towards people. We now understand that people have recalibrated their priorities. They want to work in a different environment, in a different way, and be appreciated. They want to be seen, heard, valued, and appreciated. Traditional thinking around EDI, I think, has shifted. I have been involved in the whole concept of equity, diversity, and inclusion for way over 40 years. When I first joined the police service, I was automatically seen to be an expert. Why? Because I was a brown face in a sea of white. No more than that. I am no more an expert than the next person. But because I was so isolated, I was a founding member of a movement that helped me to have an impact on the whole concept of EDI. I became a founding member of the Black Police Association. I then helped other organizations set up their own organizations like the Black Police Association. I became the national chair. I got to speak to Home Office secretaries, Home Office ministers, and governmental ministers to change policing practice and the police approach to EDI. And I thought the answer was increased representation. And as a result of that, we set about having targets for police forces up and down the country to increase their representation from Black and minority ethnic communities. I now understand that that's probably not the sole answer, not the complete answer. And actually, it shouldn't come as the first and foremost. What we need to do is actually look at focusing our cultures. You see, what we end up doing in organizations, we end up hiring people in who look different, think different, and behave differently in our organizations. But then because the culture is not shifted into our organizations, we expect them to behave exactly the same as everybody else. And it's such a waste of time. So I think in this era of the who, it's understanding people a lot more. It's understanding that at the very heart of everything that we do sit our people. And without our people, we can't achieve everything that we want to set out to achieve. We might get short-term increased performance from them, but will we get it to this nth potential? And that's it for me. How do we create environments where people want to work way beyond what their perceived limit of potential is? So the focus is shifting towards people-centric cultures, emphasizing talent retention, recruitment, client and community understanding. These, I think, are the challenges of future-based workforces. And there's lots of research around this. There's lots of research around this over the last couple of years around how organizations need to become much more emotionally intelligent and create workforces and workplaces that are designed to be around their people. Now, some of you will recognize this. Some of you who are of a certain age, like I am, will recognize this from an advert way back when. It was a telecoms company, a mobile telephone company called Orange. And their advert always used to say, the future is orange. But I don't think the future is orange. I think the future is human-centered leadership. Human-centered leadership is my singular passion. This is what I work with organizations. We've got a conference coming up in May. Human-centered leadership, I think, is the era in which we're living right now. And if we don't understand what human-centric leadership really means, we need to maybe go back to the drawing board. But it's as simple as this. Human-centered leadership for me is about embedding emotional intelligence at every level of our organizations, from the executive board right down to the front line. It is about working at every single level. And these are the organizations and the levels of the organizations that we have been involved in, from high-performing executive teams to relationship building and creating organizational empathy that then leads on to a reduced industrial crisis. It is redefining this language of great resignation, quiet quitting, and loud quitting. It is actually creating a language where we're all in it together. Typically, when we talk about emotional intelligence, we will talk about the 4 quadrants, but we go beyond that. For us, emotional intelligence is not a nice to have. It's not a soft skill. It's a fundamental core skill. And we work with our 26 competencies here when we work with organizations and leaders. I think emotional intelligence sits at the very heartbeat of our organization. And great cultures do stand out. There are lots of organizations out there. Perhaps they don't shout about what they do, but they are recognized for the excellent organizational cultures that they create. And these are just some of them. What can we learn from them? So imagine having an environment where everybody is embraced as being different, where there's a foundation of trust across all of your levels of organization, where values sit at the very core of everything that you do, and they go beyond those shiny posters that you might have on the wall. We actually live these values. People enjoy coming to work, and everybody's pulling in the same direction. There's a great piece of work done by a chap called Patrick Lenciani. Many of you will be aware of it, I'm sure, who talks about the 5 dysfunctions of a team. And fundamentally, he says that if we don't have trust at the heartbeat of our organization, there are so many failures. And actually, the ultimate failure is everybody will be working in different directions, not pulling towards the same goal. Imagine if you had an organization where performance was delivered consistently to a high level, and that everybody had a voice, and that you operated in an environment of innovation. And I just want to sort of round up on this. We are living in a world that is more VUCA, more volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous than it's ever been before. That rapidity of change is more now than it's ever been. I don't know whether it's because I'm getting older, or whether there's a distinct change in the world as we see it now, whether that's as a result of global conflict, inflation, whether it's a remnant of COVID-19. I'm not entirely sure what it is, but there are so many factors at play that are dynamically changing the environment around us. So my question to you would be this: if we are living in this constantly evolving and shaping world, wouldn't it be useful for us to get the maximum from our people by creating an environment where everybody's voice mattered, where everybody could bring their ideas to the table, and that we're not stuck in this groupthink mentality? Imagine the creativity and the innovation that could go on in your organization if you allowed every single one of your people to be able to proffer up ideas. So the future of the workplace culture, it's not a taboo idea. And I'll leave you with this quote. According to Darwin's Origin of Species, it's not the most intellectual of the species that survives. It is not the strongest that survives, but the species that survives is the one that's best able to adapt and adjust to the changing environment which it finds itself in. And that's where we are right now. That's me. Please do, if you want to be in touch, but it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for your time.
Incredible, Cole. Thank you very much for that discovery into emotional intelligence and how we create that culture of trust that's so important for everything that we do. As you mentioned, that the high performing teams, and it's really great to see how everything links together there.
Yeah, I'm just sorry my slides were running away with me. I don't know what's going on there.
Too keen to get ahead.
That's technology.
Yeah. So I'm sure we've got lots of questions brewing in the Slido app, which we will come to at the end, Cole. But just a reminder for everybody else, the code for the Slido app is #ILW24. And as I said, we'll use all of these questions in the panel discussion at the end. But now for our second speaker. So our second speaker has been a friend of the Institute for many years, and that's Jo Keeler. So during her time at Belbin, Jo has been responsible for navigating the company's strategic and operational activities and building the Belbin brand, both across the UK and worldwide. In recent years, Jo's been focusing the effort on bringing the Belbin message to that international audience and inspiring them to use the team role framework to usher in lasting team and business performance improvements. So this year, Jo has already done some work with us here at the Institute, and she shared her insights at our L&D Trends launch in London. And she's also run a two-part masterclass series on the authentic team leadership and brand you. Today, Jo is going to explore how leaders can leverage the combined strengths of their team, and this demonstrates the power of a collaborative approach for effective leadership. So without further delay, leadership, team, not a solo endeavour. Jo, over to you.
Thank you so much. And it is wonderful to be here again with everybody. Massive thanks, Mel and to Jerome, and also to Karen and Becky, who do so much to make sure that these events work so smoothly. Unfortunately, I had to turn my camera on. I was prompted to do so a little bit sooner. I've written so many notes, Cal. Thank you so much for that presentation. That was so useful. I then had to quickly remember what on earth I was talking about. I always find that when I'm second on, I get immersed into somebody else's presentation. So thank you. I've taken so much from that, and I think there's going to be some areas where we talk about the same things, which is a good thing, isn't it? Okay, so let me share my screen, she says, hopefully. Okay, here we go. I hope you can see that. Okay, so we're going to be looking at leadership, you know, the difference between team leadership and solo leadership. I know it's difficult sometimes, isn't it? Knowing, I know this is putting it in very sort of simplistic terms, perhaps, but looking at the difference between those two. So very much, we have sort of these two sort of quite divergent styles of leadership. In the past, our concepts and our experience of leadership have revolved around the solo leader. This leader is quite familiar to us. It's the one with sort of ardent followers who unhesitatingly takes on any role and assumes any responsibility that would otherwise, you know, fall to somebody else. The solo leader enjoys free range and rules as if absolutely. The mode of behaviour carries the advantage that departmental barriers and obstacles can be overcome, and decisions urgently needed can be put into effect without delay. It's small wonder, really, in times of crisis, you have these talented solo leaders coming to the fore and have been able to achieve so much. However, there are also circumstances in which complexity poses greater problems than urgency, where solo leadership is less appropriate. Happily, as we know, an alternative is available that we really need to turn our attention to, and we refer to this as team leadership. The essential difference is that the team leader deliberately limits their role and declines to rule absolutely. That self-limitation shows itself in a number of ways. Okay, let's get to that first slide. Patience is a virtue. Okay, firstly, the team leader does not expect to be wiser, more creative, or more far-seeing than their colleagues, and in consequence is more humble than the solo leader. For that very reason, the team leader seeks talent in order to compensate for any personal shortcomings and to improve the balance of the team. The team leader is less interested, and actually very often not interested at all, in admirers and sycophants. Secondly, by having a greater degree of respect for and trust in others, the team leader is more inclined to delegate, and they don't interfere with the way in which others operate, and they're more concerned with outcomes. Thirdly, the team leader fulfills a leadership role by creating a sense of mission. Mission creates the framework whereby each person contributes in his or her particular way to the common purpose. In that respect, the selection and the development of the team are crucial. The assignment of responsibility would otherwise be no more than an act of faith. So very different then is the directive approach of the solo leader who prefers to dole out tasks and specific goals, who expects compliance and takes no risks with people. The leader is the model that others are expected to follow, where inevitably leaders fail, they tend to be discarded. So if we're looking at a leader who isn't there for people to follow, as a team leader, how can they really lead? Well, the answer lies in understanding the nature of leadership and the qualities it requires, in having the humility to appreciate that these may not be the individual strong points, in possessing the people skills to recognize them in others, and the strength of purpose to draw suitably gifted individuals into the team. Now, this combination is rare. It occurs naturally in some, but these qualities can be learned. Of course, naturals do find it easier than others to be able to learn this. I suppose a good question at this point is why team leadership has come increasingly to the fore in recent years. And I think there are two answers to this. The first is that we are living in a world of increasing uncertainty, characterized by a process of sudden and threatening change. One person can no longer comprehend everything or provide the direction that can cover all occasions. The second is that team leadership is the only form of leadership acceptable in a society where power is shared and where so many people are near equals. Just like that, to say that again, is the first is that we are living in a world of increasing uncertainty, characterized by a process of sudden and threatening change. I repeat that because those of you who know me may have realized that's not my normal style of a presentation. And that's because I've just been reading verbatim from Team Roles at Work, from chapter 11, Leadership for the Modern World, first published in 1993. This is over 30 years old. The book has been published again last year, and we've added an extra chapter in there to talk about leadership and team working in a virtual world. But I thought it was important to share this because actually this whole concept of collaboration isn't something that's new. It's something that I think we know that has needed to happen over the years. Meredith is an incredible chap. He's 98 in June. And I think some of the things that he talked about, he spoke about, he researched back in the 60s and 70s is only really now coming to fruition. But collaboration, this is why I'm so delighted that collaboration is, the topic for the Institute of Leadership, because we know that it's critical for the future. Meredith knew it was critical for the future 31 years ago. So what does this kind of look like today? There you go, I can stop reading now, I can take my glasses off. People may not have known it was me, I used long words and everything. Okay, so what does this actually mean? Well, let's go back to what Meredith said. A team leader does not expect to be wiser, more creative, or more far-seeing than colleagues. We need to be able to create a team. We need to know that we as leaders cannot do everything because we think we can sometimes. What we need to be able to have is that humility and saying that actually we can't do everything by ourselves. We need to carefully select a team to be able to help us with that. We need to really start with self, though, because how do we know what kind of team that we need to collaborate with unless we really understand the strengths that we're bringing? And as said right at the very beginning, we ran a couple of workshops or masterclasses earlier this year looking at authentic leadership and how to brand yourself. And I think anything that starts with collaboration starts with you. You need to, first of all, start with your strengths and who you are as a leader to be able to then take those next steps, because collaboration could mean working with one other person. It could be working with 2 or 3. It could be working with a whole group. The action of working with somebody to produce something, hopefully with a greater outcome than if you'd worked on it by yourself. So this is what we're talking about, really, is understanding self. And then understanding that we can't be everything. As leaders, we need to step back. We need to have humility. And we need to be able to understand everybody within the team. Carl, that was brilliant what you said. It is the era of who, isn't it? Who have you got around you? And when we're talking about that element of diversity, we've also got behavioural diversity as well. We've got to make sure that, just using the Belbin terminology, we have those 9 clusters of different ways of looking at things, different ways of working with things. And we need this to be able to work as a collaborative leader, as a team leader. What people tend to do in that solo leader is they just surround themselves with yes people, I suppose. Yes, they would do. They direct everything to them. What we need to remember when we're collaborating with a collaborative leader is that we need people who are going to really complement each other. There's a wonderful quote by the chap who used to run Alibaba, who's a huge company in China. I think they're globally one of the biggest companies there is. And he surrounds himself with people who know more than him. It's his aim. It's my aim at the moment as well. Surround yourself with people who are better than you at various things. And you just need to orchestrate the effort. You need to know who to delegate to. So it's about creating that team and having the humility to be able to do that, the humility to understand that you can't do everything yourself. This, I think, Jerome, I think you remember this. This was the slide of the workshop. It's just an elastic band, and it's interesting, isn't it? How much power just one image has. And again, what we're talking about is the sense of self and understanding yourself. Now, if you are a solo leader, perhaps an old school solo leader, you've got your elastic band and it doesn't stretch at all because you're delegating to everybody, isn't it? You're right. Nobody's going to query what you're saying. You're in power. You're just telling everybody what to do. But then what we then come into is a bit more into that collaborative leadership, that team leadership. And sometimes what we tend to do is we try and do, like I said before, you try and do everything. And what we need to do is remember not to, because of the elastic band theory. I'm not sure this is a theory. I might write a book. I'm not entirely sure. But as a leader, what you can do sometimes is you can stretch, because what you're trying to do is fulfill other roles. You're trying to be something that you're not. You're trying to make a contribution that perhaps might be best suited to somebody else, but you're trying to do it because you feel you're a leader now and you need to do everything. We've all been there. I've been there. You suddenly get, that job title, don't you? And you suddenly think, oh my God, I'm responsible for everything. I've got to do everything. Now, with this elastic band, what you can do is you can stretch a bit. We all need to stretch. We all need to do things that sometimes we don't want to do. This is facts. This is life. But what we need to make sure is we're not stretching too much and too often, that when you come back, you're not quite yourself. Sometimes you lose a little bit of elasticity. And sometimes, again, what you can do is stretch too much too frequently. That's when burnout happens, because we're trying to be everything. We're trying to focus as a solo leader. We're trying to do everything when the team is better suited to be able to help. So if you find your internal elastic band stretching that little bit too much, just start to think, is there somebody else within the team who would be better suited for this? Because you can't collaborate if you're on full stretch. If you're going to collaborate with people, you need to make sure that you are feeling comfortable in the contributions that you're making. I put this up because I think this is, do you know, there's so many pieces, aren't there, that are key to collaboration and key to team leadership and key to getting the best outcomes that you really, really want. But I would say this is another element, and this becomes this understanding your team and understanding the people that you work with, having the humility of being able to understand that everybody is different, everybody's bringing something different to the party. Delegation is key, but how do we delegate? Do we delegate in the way that we want to delegate, or we like things to be delegated to us? Or do we understand what everybody's bringing? And do we change the communication, our leadership style, so that we treat people how they want to be treated, so that they do their best work? I think a takeaway when looking at collaboration in terms of the differences between solo and team leadership is, before the collaboration begins, work needs to happen. So before you start creating magic, you need to sit down with the people that you are working with, define what it is that you're looking to achieve, make sure there's clarity, but then to have almost a contract in the way in which you are going to collaborate, looking and respecting those differences that we're bringing to the table. Because there's nothing worse. I don't know if anybody's been in this situation when you're working with somebody and they're very different to you, and you think you're having this wonderful creative brainstorming, and they keep coming up with faults. Oh, no, that won't work. Well, that won't work. That won't work. And it ends up like, well, I thought we were doing this together. Why are you being so negative? And you think, well, hang on a sec. If I understand that somebody likes to make the decision, likes to make sure that things are right, and I'm all over here, no wonder we haven't got a good working relationship. How would they best be treated? Perhaps if I gave them all the information before we started to chat about it, they'd have time to deliberate, and we could just really talk about that one option which I think might actually work. So it's so crucial to understand how others want to be treated, and don't treat them how you want to be. I often say this because, I prefer, things to be working at 110 miles an hour, everything slightly last minute, involving lots of people, lots of talking and hand waving. If I talk to people in that same way, I'm not going to get the most out of them. Some people I will, because some people are similar to me, but I need to make sure that I know the strengths of everybody. Okay. Going back to the book of that Meredith has written, just to sum up, really. This was written by, in fact, I apologize, this is Sir Anthony Jay, who was very famous. He wrote Yes, Minister. We're going back to people of, my age. Yes, thank you very much. So he wrote Yes, Minister. He was involved in video arts. He set up video arts with John Cleese, many, many moons ago. And he also wrote the foreword for Meredith's book, the first one, Management Teams, in 1981. And he recognized that it is not the individual, but the team that is the instrument of sustained and enduring success. And I would add to that it's understanding the differences within that team. And as a leader, being able to harness those differences and becoming a team leader and being able to collaborate and work effectively with others is where you're going to be most successful. So we started from the 60s and 70s. We've ended back here sort of in the 80s as well. But it just shows you how crucial team collaboration and team leadership is now. Because we talk about, this VUCA world that we live in. Perhaps we've always been there, but perhaps it's a little bit more in our face at the moment, and we need to start making steps forward. So thank you very much. And I look forward very much to hearing all of your questions on the panel.
Thank you, Jo. Absolutely brilliant. As always, friend of the Institute, and it's stunning. Thank you so much for sharing your insights with our whole community and everyone, and loads of great comments coming in. Everything that you're sharing is really resonating with everyone, and you're keeping us on our toes out there. We've got comments in the chat area and in Slido. Do post your questions in Slido. Remember, #ILW24. Thank you for reading from Meredith Belbin's book. His scribes are so insightful and still relevant, if not more so then as they are now. And you really underlined the fact that collaboration is critical for the future. So thank you for building on that. Carl, I want to loop back to you. We've got so many amazing comments coming in. That has really evoked so many great reactions from our audience. We'll be asking you some questions on the panel, so please don't stand at ease for too long. We'll be calling upon you shortly, but absolutely brilliant. Now, what a wonderful webinar, and already we're coming to our third speaker, and we're absolutely thrilled to have Cory Charles, who's here from Florida, no less, today. Thank you so much for joining us. And we, as a team, we joined the call a few minutes prior, and there was one thing that really stood out, which was remarkable, without even hearing from Cory as yet. And I'm sure you can all see on screen, you look magnificent, sir. I mean, we really are in the presence of a wonderful speaker, an amazing motivational speaker, an author, a sales trainer, and founder of the Superhero Mindset. Do check him out. Cory, you've got a strong background in sales and a really deep understanding in psychology. And Cory has captivated audience around the world through engaging with interactive presentations, leaving people inspired to discover their own superpowers. And Cory, you're dedicated to empowering individuals to become unapologetically awesome. I love that, Cory. So in sales, in their life, in leadership, in every aspect of their life. So without delay, please, let's hear from you. Over to you, Cory.
Oh, Jerome, such an amazing introduction, my friend. I just want to take you on the road with me and just have you travel around and introduce me everywhere I go. But I know that's a misuse of your skills. So welcome, everyone. So great to talk to you. I was, so thrilled just to sit back and listen to those two amazing speakers and to hear everything they had to say. Just like Joe, I have a full book of notes over here. Now, Jerome already told you, obviously, you can hear by my voice. I'm calling from the States. I'm calling from dusty, dirty, hot Florida. I don't want to make fun of my state too much, but I'm very excited to join my friends across the pond. Unfortunately, I don't sound as cool as the rest of you, but I do wear very loud clothing to make up for it. Now, my grandmother spent a lot of her time doing her schooling in the UK, so she used to call me her little Yankee. So you guys can call me that if you want, if it makes you feel better. I think realistically that Jerome added the closed captions just so you guys can understand what I'm saying. So I'll try to speak clearly because, I don't have a very distinct accent. It's not very cool or very fun. But anyways, I want to talk to you about something that I think is really important. But first, I want to tell you a story. Jerome already talked about my background a little bit. I have been living in the sales world for quite a long time. And I have been a leadership coach as well for equally as long. And I think it's something that's very important. But one of the lessons that I learned really early in my career, I was with a amazing sales leader, and I was given a task. If I'm being honest with you, I wasn't fully paying attention to the instructions of the task. Cole talked about it earlier, the rise in ADHD. I am one of those victims. So I wasn't fully paying attention to the task and the instructions of the task. And let's be honest, I'm going to be real honest with my friends here. I made a big old mistake, big old boo-boo. And it wasn't one of those little boo-boos. It was a very expensive, very costly boo-boo. Now, my father, who is very dear to me, has always told me that when you make a mistake, you got to pull up your pants and you got to walk in and you got to just accept the consequences for your actions. So I went into my leader's office fully prepared to be escorted out of the building and off the property for my very costly mistake. And I told the leader the mistake that I made, and I, basically handed over my resignation letter and was ready to walk the plank, as you say. And, he looked at me and said, "Why would I fire you? I just spent 6 figures training you. And that's a lesson I don't think I'll have to teach you again." And that was my first lesson in leadership. So as we said before, I'm the founder of the Superhero Mindset Company, and we do sales training and leadership coaching. But more importantly than that, we live in this word called impact. Impact has been the guiding force of the company, and impact has broken down into 6 different parts. I want to share it with you before we jump into my session of the fun. So impact for us means inspiration, motivation, purpose, authenticity, courage, and transformation. Those big 6 are really important to our mission of impact. And I'll tell you another story. I think it's gonna all make sense in a moment. Now, I have 3 lovely boys. My youngest is 4 months old. My oldest is 10. And my middle child is a bit of a firecracker. He's got a lot of his dad in him, and he plays on a football team. And the first season we played football, as a coach, we didn't give them proper instructions, and we told them to go run their routes. And what happens when 6-year-olds go run and try to find where they're supposed to be? They run into each other, they fall down, they cry, they skin their knees, they do all that stuff that's not supposed to happen on the football field. Synergy, really important to give them an idea of what they're supposed to be doing. Now, I'm thrilled to say we fast forward a couple of years, they've gotten much better. They are now a championship team. If you look closely, you can see a couple of trophies hiding behind me. And on their last championship, we decided to have a party for their achievements and to celebrate what they were doing. And we told the parents, kind of potluck style, to bring refreshments and bring things together so the kids could celebrate. Now, unfortunately, we didn't give proper instructions, lesson for us. And what we had was a room of napkins and silverware and plates and cups, but unfortunately no food. Synergy, really important. We did not give them the proper instructions. So as we kind of go through our world, we see these opportunities all the time to make sure that synergy is something that we're using to our benefit and something we're using to our advantage. It is really simple when it happens in our everyday life, but it can be really impactful when it happens in our corporate lives and it happens in our businesses. So today I want to dive into the power of synergy for a little bit. And I think there's incredible strength that comes from making sure that we align our team's efforts to a common goal, because just like a well-oiled machine, when we work together seamlessly, there's not a lot of things that we can't achieve. And in fact, we can achieve some really extraordinary results. So before we take off, I want us to identify some of the common obstacles that can stand in our way when we're trying to achieve that really high level of synergy. These could be our inefficient processes, which we all know happens. This could be a communication breakdowns, or this could be a lack of clarity in our objectives. So how do we overcome these challenges and unlock our team's full potential? So I'm gonna unveil a toolkit for you. Hopefully it's really easy to digest. I'm gonna give you a couple steps to make sure that we can unlock this new level of our team's achievements. So here's a set of strategies. It's gonna change the way we work. The first thing we need to do, the first thing that we need to think about is the importance of clear objectives. I gave you a couple examples of when objectives go wrong. So we need to make sure that we have clear objectives, just like a roadmap guides our journey. Clear goals help us navigate to success. So I want to be really clear. It's not just clear goals to you. It has to be clear to everyone involved in the project or everyone involved in the process. So when everyone knows what they're working towards and how to get there, that's when we can align our efforts and effectively avoid wasted time, wasted resources. The second thing is we need to embrace the power of lean principles to eliminate waste from our processes. We're used to 3 common steps. I think you all will recognize most of these. I hope they're not too singular to my neck of the woods, but we are conditioned as human beings to follow simple steps, especially 3s. That's kind of the magic number. We have the 3 little pigs. We have 3 blind mice. When we have phrases, we have phrases like ready, set, go. Lights, camera, action. Some of you are probably saying these with me. What happens if we catch on fire? We say stop, drop, roll, 3 simple steps. Now imagine if you were on fire and there were 12 steps to put yourself out of fire. Some of us would be cooked. Some of us would be in big trouble. So we are conditioned to learn 3 simple steps, 3 simple steps. Okay. So by trimming the fat on focusing on what truly matters, we can achieve more with less. And that's the importance here. Now, the third principle is communication. The secret sauce of effective teamwork is high-level communication. So we do that by fostering open dialogue, active listening, and clear feedback channels. One of the things that we say often is I have an open door policy. It's very passive. I think we need to focus, especially as leaders, more on making sure that we are driving those conversations versus the open door policy. I think we have to open some of those doors ourselves. So when we do those things, we can ensure that everyone is on the same page and working towards that shared vision that's really important for what we want to accomplish. The fourth principle, I apologize, I'm getting stuck in my words. It's very early here in the States. But the fourth principle is it's teamwork, but it's more than just about working together. It's about empowering each member of the team and giving them the opportunity to shine and be their absolute best. So by creating this culture of collaboration, a culture of support, we can tap into the unique strengths of each individual and achieve greatness together. I say the unique strengths. In my language, I typically say the superpowers, but I'll scale it back a little bit. But by tapping into those unique strengths of everyone on our team, that's when we can achieve amazing things together. It's no different than the stories we read or the movies and television shows we watch. There's a power in the team. And the fifth principle, we have to embrace this journey of continuous improvement. What excites me to the core is to see so many folks on this call doing just that, embracing the journey of continuous improvement, always wanting to be better, always knowing that there's room to grow as a leader, there's room to grow as a person, there's room to grow in so many aspects of our life. And by staying really agile and staying very adaptable and very nimble, we can evolve with the changing landscape and stay ahead of any curve that comes our way. Cole talked brilliantly about the more than twists and turns we've had over the last couple years. And by being agile, by being adaptable, and being able to evolve with the changing landscape, that's what gives us the ability to be weatherproof. That's what gives us the ability to stay ahead of most, if not all, changes that are going to come our way, especially in these insane roles we have sometimes. So as I bring this all together, I want to challenge you all to embrace the power of synergy. I want you all to take a step back and understand that there are opportunities to involve everyone where you don't have to wear the weight of this mission, this vision on your own shoulders. This is the power of having a really excellent team. I want to give you a quote, and hopefully this sticks. We can go faster alone, but we can go much further together. And that has to be our guiding principle when we look at maximizing our ability to lead at a very high level. So let's really focus on our impact by streamlining our operations, supercharging our productivity, and eliminating that waste by getting to clear and concise directions, decisions, and visions. So together, we can achieve extraordinary results and make a real difference, not just in the world, but in our own world and the people around us. So I want you all to really focus on the things, especially the previous speakers spoke about, and take that into practice. It is really great when we have amazing summits and seminars and we have great information that we can write down. The goal is, how do we take that information? I call it, instead of having a beautiful poster, a motivational poster, or a poster that has some great information, how do we take that from the walls to the halls? How do we take that amazing information and all the things that we learned today, and how do we infuse it into the business and make sure that everyone gets to feel the same power, same excitement? That's what being a world-class organization is all about. So I want you all to remember, with great leadership comes great responsibility, to steal a quote. And more importantly, with great teamwork comes great success. So take all these amazing tools, take everything that we've learned today, take it into action, and make sure that we use it to absolutely transform our teams. I thank you all for your time. I'm excited that we're on this journey together. You can reach out to me anytime, any way that you want. I spend most of my time on LinkedIn. But again, thank you all so much.
Fabulous. Thank you, Cory. Thank you for your generosity of spirit and for sharing your insights, your time, for joining us today. Thank you all so much. I love your energy. No need for closed captions. We can understand you perfectly. Thank you. And love the quote that you shared. We can go faster alone, but you know, together we go much further. Just love that, Cory. Thank you. And really emphasizing the importance of synergy, synergy in the team, and reminding us all that the theme for International Leadership Week is around collaboration. So thank you so much. Cory, Joe and Col, you've absolutely smashed the agenda on that one. Right, we're going to bring it all together. So Mel and I now will facilitate a Q&A session. We're together for around another 30 minutes, and we're going to be tagging. I'll start with the first question. And Slido has been really active. Thank you everyone for posting your comments. We've got some individual comments for each of you, but I want to start with a collective question that brings us together. And we've heard lots of examples from you, but I'll just put it out there to the panel. Can you give some examples of successful collaborative leadership in action, and what lessons can be learned from these examples? Any volunteer there? Carl, you're nodding your head.
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. And I think there are plenty of examples out there. Sometimes we start looking at the challenges as opposed to people who are doing some incredible work around those challenges. One of the examples that I have seen time and again from great leaders is this whole issue around strategic priorities. Every organization sets strategic priorities. And I find two types of leaders in this regard. There are those leaders who at the departmental level might take away these strategic priorities for the organization, and they create their business plan. They will write a business plan, say, this is how we intend to meet those strategic priorities. Now, the other type of leader will actually go away and collaborate. They will talk to their individual teams within their departments and ask them, how do you think we could meet these strategic priorities? And they develop and write their business plans based upon the input and the feedback from their teams. Now, which ones do you think perform better? In my experience, time and again, it's always those who have collaborated with their teams and developed their business plans, which align with the strategic priorities of the organizations, that outperform the others that have been formed in isolation. And I think it sort of harks back to what Cory is talking about. You can go faster alone. It's faster sitting there in a darkened room. And I remember this one leader that I worked with, he called himself very strategic. He'd sit there in a quietened room, in a darkened room, and write the business plan for the organization. And he always got his business plan in first. But the ones that took their time always did their business plans better and made them more meaningful. So yes, Cory's absolutely right. You go faster alone, but you go further together. And that's my example of collaborative teamwork.
Just to add to that, and thank you for the shout out call. I think that's amazing. Just to add to that, I think, going back to what we were talking about before, I think it's really important for leaders to have a really good understanding of their team and who they're working with. One of the things I mentioned before is helping people kind of unleash and unlock their inner potential. As a leader, sometimes you have to be able to see down the road and see what that is, even before I, as your teammate, sees that for myself. And one of the things I really think we should focus on is that sometimes as a leader, you have to guide people, not necessarily where they want to go or be, but where they need to be. And sometimes that is putting people out of their comfort zone and putting them in a place that feels uncomfortable, feels sticky, feels a little bit like trouble, but knowing that I can see down the road, that's where you should be. That's where you're going to get people that really blossom and develop into these amazing personalities that we may not even have seen coming. So that's where I think collaboration is really important, is to know exactly who you're working with.
Thank you both, and I hope the person who asked the question is really benefiting from this, and I'm sure all of you are. Joe, would you like to add a layer before Mel sort of delivers the next question?
Any examples, wasn't it? Any examples?
I'm sure you have so many. Yeah,
we do, but I would say that sometimes you don't see it because it's not as visible. I think when you've got that solo leader who is trying to do everything themselves, they're so visible. But actually, I would say that one of the real strengths of a truly team leader, one who collaborates, is sometimes you wouldn't know who the leader is when you went into the room. So I think it's harder to find great examples. We've worked with many companies, but it is harder to give ones that are in the public eye, because by definition, they wouldn't be. So I think that's a really interesting one, isn't it? Is sometimes that visibility isn't as great. And just to, Cory, just to add on to the love that you're receiving from everybody here at the moment, not only for your suit. One thing I really, really loved, God, I shouldn't be writing in a Sharpie, by the way, it's not doing me any good, is take from the walls to the halls. I've not heard that before. And that's what team leadership is about, isn't it? It's not about all of these acolyte sort of posters saying how brilliant and everything else. It's about actually doing. So thank you for that. If it's okay, I'm going to steal that.
The first 3 times it's yours, the 4th time you have to give me credit.
I will do that. Thank you.
That's fantastic. Thank you. It's great to hear your insights there, all of you. There's so many great questions coming in. It's really difficult to choose which one to ask you next. But this is another question that I'd like to put to all of you. And it follows on from the question you've just answered. And it's, what are the key characteristics or traits of a collaborative leader, and how can individuals develop these qualities?
Okay, can I start? Okay, the other way around, perhaps. There isn't one. I'd say that the key element of a truly is self-awareness and being humble and getting feedback from other people. There isn't a blueprint. There isn't a this is the perfect one, I need to be like them. The key element is understanding yourself, and then it's not what cards you have dealt, it's how you play them, which is the important part. So it's understanding yourself to be able to play that as much as possible. But I would say one part of, I think it was Meredith Belbin who said, somebody said this to me, is they said, what you need is a really, a team leader. One of the qualities is that you need to be able to have the strength to be able to, or the courage to be able to ask for feedback from everybody, to listen to everybody, but have the courage to make the right decision yourself. So it's encouraging feedback, but at the end of the day, you do need to make that decision, but you need to listen to other people.
Yeah, I'd just like to add to that, Joe. I think you're absolutely right. Everything starts with self-awareness, irrespective of where you are. And for those leaders who are continuously growing, who have the infinite mind, as Simon Sinek puts it in his book, you have to be acutely self-aware. And in order for you to be self-aware, you have to be accurately self-aware. So it's all very well seeking feedback from people who are going to make us feel good. Where we really grow is when we seek feedback from people who tell us about our developmental areas. And in order to get that accuracy of that feedback, we have to, when we ask for feedback, we have to create an environment where people feel courageous enough to tell us as it is. I'm a very pragmatic kind of individual. I want people to tell me, but I know that many people won't tell me if they don't feel safe in that environment. So you have to create that environment of safety where they feel they can tell you the whole picture, and only then as a leader can you grow. I forget what the question was now, but this whole idea of self-awareness that Joe started with has really got me going, because it's such an important area, this whole concept of self-awareness. I hope I've answered the question, even if it's in part.
Yeah, you did. The question was, how can individuals develop the qualities to be a collaborative leader? So yes, you did. And I love that. You have to be open to accepting that feedback, don't you? And acting on it. So Cory, I wasn't sure if you had anything else you wanted
I
to...
did. It's funny when the question came out, the first thought I had was self-awareness, and to see Joe and Cole go down that road, I won't spoil it anymore, but I talk a lot about superpowers and inner talents and the things that we have given to us. I do think the one superpower that everyone walking this earth has, there's actually two, but the one most important one, if we choose to use it, is self-awareness. We have that ingrained in us. We just have to use it. And the second superpower that we have is choice. We make thousands of choices every single day. They all matter. Some are more important than others. So making sure that we are really aware of the choices that we make. And I think the last piece that I want to live in a little bit is authenticity. Jerome said it earlier. I talked about being unapologetically awesome. That's my version of authenticity. But it's too easy to grow up in the industry, in any industry that you're in, and see an amazing leader like Joe and say, that's the leader that I want to be. But if that's not in sync with who I am as a person and who I need to be as a leader, it won't work. If I see Cull and say, gosh, he is such an amazing leader, but I don't have the same upbringing, background, ability to communicate that he does, me copying his style will not get me anywhere. It just comes off phony, if we're going to be simple. So I think being your authentic self, a great quote that one of my favorite wrestlers, The Rock, says, the version that you see on television is not a character, it is me, but I cranked the dial up to 11. When I look at high-powered leadership, my idea is that it's got to be me, and I just have to know how to crank the dial where it needs to be in that moment.
I love that, Cory. I'll just add to this. I went on a TV presenters course a year or two ago, and one of the best pieces of advice I took away from that was, whenever you are in front of a TV camera, you just have to be a production version of who you really are. So that fits into this whole cranking
Perfect.
up idea. I love it.
Wonderful. What a great conversation. It's brilliant. So thank you. And self-awareness is a key trait. And Cory, you made that link to authenticity, and instantly we're in good company at the Institute. We have our values and dimensions of leadership, and they all start with authenticity and self-awareness. So absolutely fantastic there. Now, comments coming in. I'd like to, if I may, play the technology card. It needs to come because obviously you emphasised the VUCA world, and obviously the technological revolution is part of that. I remember Orange, and so much going on. We've got comments in terms of dispersed teams and the challenge that's represented there through collaboration. So let's think about technology and what role technology plays in streamlining operations and fostering team collaboration. And I'll use your term, Cory, team synergy. We're better as a collective. So how can technology assist us with that? Cory, I'm looking at you.
Yeah,
let's start with you. Let's start with you. Yeah,
I think especially in today's age, for me, I basically had to live out of this room for about 3 years. So technology can play a really amazing and crucial role, especially when it comes to streamlining operations, making sure that we do have that team synergy by automating tasks. There's a lot of different things, centralizing communication, collaboration. There's a lot of things we can do with technology, but I want us to always remember that technology is a tool and we can't let it replace the human, because the human element is so important, especially when we talk about collaborative teams. We can use the right platforms, and that can make our workflows easier, that can make reduce errors, that can make things great, but it's really essential that we ensure that these tools and solutions are implemented thoughtfully, and that they align with the goals that we have and they align with our processes, because we want to use those tools to maximize our efforts, not to replace our efforts.
Thank you. Would anyone like to build on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that you've asked this question, because I was speaking about 3 weeks ago at an AI summit and talking about how emotional intelligence still plays a significant part within the whole construct of AI and this digital world. And digital transformation, just like every other transformation, is going at rapid speed right now.
Yeah.
We have seen in the last 4 years things like this evolving. You know, we would not have dreamt 3 or 4 years ago of being in an online seminar, to have invited people from across the pond, as Cory has traveled from his own little room. And this was a thing that we just wouldn't envisage. And now we have the ability to share Slido, to share questions, to have or to create breakout groups, and it's become a bit of a norm. So that's how fast and how wide technology has taken us. However, within all of that, just as Cory has said, we have to remain human. And there are 3 key C's that I think are critical to managing technology in its current form and the growth of technology in this world of transformation in which we exist. And those are collaboration, connection, and communication. We have to collaborate with people much more widely. We cannot afford to become enslaved by digital transformation, but to see it as a tool. Connection, whilever we have digital tools and we are living in our rooms wherever we are. I was the same as you, Cory. I practically lived in this office delivering my online stuff for 2 years. We can forget that there is an ability to connect, and actually we have an even better ability to connect, a more rapid ability to connect, and a wider ability to connect. So we need to use the technology as a tool in order to build that connection. And finally, it is about communication. Communication, when I talk about that, is in the context of we still have to be human in our communication. And I think sometimes people put on masks when they are sat in front of screens, but we have to go back to what we were talking about before. If you are going to do something that's a production in front of a screen, then you just have to make sure it's an authentic version of who you are, and that you can't lose yourself within that, and you can't afford to wear a mask just because you happen to be talking to a camera.
Thank you. Thank you. Any thoughts on technology, Joe?
Yeah, I will actually. I'd just like to add a caveat there. Is just because you can doesn't mean you should. Because I think sometimes we jump on things too quickly. Oh, this is new, this is shiny. Let us use this because it's going to be so helpful. And after a while, nobody communicates anymore because they don't know what flipping app they're meant to be seeing the notifications on, or what they're meant to be doing, or what the contract is in the first place. And this is real. We carried out a survey and we looked at before and after. We looked at remote and hybrid working, and we found that although individual engagement goes up in a hybrid workplace, actually team engagement is going down. So we need to be really conscious. And I think one of the problems and one of the reasons it's gone down is because we thought that what was happening face to face, we can just copy and paste. And as long as we've got the technology, we can do exactly the same online, like this. But we need to be really cautious, because one of the areas where it significantly went down with engagement was with new starters. It was with people who didn't know the rest of the team, who didn't have those social cues that perhaps were already that culture that everybody makes the assumption that everybody knows what to do, and et cetera, et cetera. It does cause problems. So yes, I think technology is wonderful. Embrace it, use it, it's there. But don't you try and use it. It's not a panacea. It's not a cure-all. We need to have the same amount of engagement and understanding of why we're using it before we go and sign up to another app. That's all I'll say there.
Great, excellent. Thank you all.
Fantastic. The next question, I think, flows really quite nicely from there, because we've talked about technology and the advantages of technology, and also how it can hinder collaboration. And I think in recent times, it's been very easy to blame the problems of collaboration around hybrid environment and technology. But what are the other potential challenges or barriers to implementing collaborative leadership, and how can they be overcome?
If I might just come in on that, that's a really interesting question, and it does stretch our thinking. One example that comes to my mind straight away is, and I've seen this happen at least twice in the last 30 to 40 years, every time there is a stretch or a tightening of finances. Maybe it's through some kind of recession or some kind of financial crisis. What I find that many organizations do, they will focus in on what they believe to be their core role, their core function, and they will preclude anything that they perceive to be a nice to have. Now, often within that, when it comes to people and it comes to collaboration and it comes to team building, we often think of this as being a nice to have. When actually, and it's a phrase that really does bug me, soft skills, when actually the reality of it is that without your people, you can do very little. And there's a simple metric in so much as happy people will work harder. So it's particularly in those times of stretch when we need to invest more in our people to get the best out of our people to achieve more with less.
That's great. Joe, Cory, did you have any further comments to add?
I'd just like to just agree really with that. And I think we deal with teams day in, day out. That's what we're doing. We're helping teams all of the time. And we only tend to be called in at the end point when it's all going horribly wrong. And although I'd say that's really interesting, you like to pull your sleeves up and get to those conversations. I'm like, why couldn't you have done it at the beginning? You wouldn't have needed us, So I think as much time spent up front with people, you're quite right, Cal. It's so crucial. It should be the last thing you cut, not the first. And I think that leads sometimes as well with the culture of the organization, doesn't it? I think that can be a massive barrier into authentic leadership, is that how many times you've seen organizations that are looking for, we need to do things differently. We're going to have a culture add as opposed to a culture fit. We're going to have a whole new type of leadership. And then they get on board and they get really scared and they go, oh, no, actually, we ought to go back to how we were doing it before. So it's the culture as well within an organization, is that we, sometimes that does hinder real authentic leadership. I don't know if you've seen that, Cory. I'm sure you have.
Absolutely. I don't want to add too much to that because that was phenomenal just hearing you two. But what I will say, one piece that is also really important when it comes to collaborative leadership is trust. And sometimes that gets left on the cutting room floor, unfortunately, is making sure that we trust our people to be a part of the collaborative process, and that we trust in our abilities that if a mistake is made, I can right the ship. I will make sure that no matter what the mistake is made, the house won't burn down. That's trust in myself, but also having that trust in my team. I can speak clearly because she's not home today. My wife's not home, but we have a newborn, and I asked her, how can I help you? How can I help make, anything that you're doing easier? And she said, can you clean the bottles? Like some other folks on this call, I cleaned the bottles wrong. So she decided to do it herself. So the challenge there is, I never learned how to clean the bottles correctly. So all she did was add more to her plate, and I still didn't learn how to correct what I had done wrong. So making sure that we collaborate, we have to trust in our teams and trust in our ability to fix anything that goes too far off the rails. So, the whole thing doesn't come collapsing down, because it won't.
Can I just add to that? I think that the whole issue around trust is so supremely powerful, so supremely important, and it's something that we just don't talk enough about. And as much as we need the trust of our staff, need the trust. We need the trust in our staff to do what they need to do. We also need to earn their trust in ourselves as leaders, and that is about coming back to the whole idea of authenticity. And I love that. I had to chuckle, Joe, when you were talking about when organizations call us in far too late. I'm working with 2 executive teams in the next 2 weeks, both of which are going through some stretch, some financial problems, both of which have got it all wrong, and now they've called me in to manage that transformation with them. And it is that, and I just wish that organizations were much more proactive and saw the value in this kind of work that we're talking about.
Super. Thank you all. And yes, trust, absolutely. And you cited Lencioni's model earlier, Carl, on trust being the enemy of team efficiency, which is brilliant. Thank you all. We'll start wrapping up in about 5 minutes, and brace yourselves because I'll be asking you for a top tip, a takeaway for our audience, but we've got time for more before we get to that point. And I quite enjoy this question. Thank you for asking it, whoever you are, anonymous. It's kind of turning things on its head because we're emphasising the benefits of collaboration, obviously. The question is, can there ever be too much collaboration? Who? You're nodding your head, Carl. Let's hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, there can be too much collaboration. You know, I go back to the work of Daniel Goleman when it comes to emotional intelligence, and in his book, I think it's called Primal Leadership. I can't remember now. He talks about 6 distinct leadership styles, and I was sitting on a spectrum, and the spectrum is either at one end you're dissonant, and on the other end you're resonant. So dissonant means to push people towards a certain direction or away from you, and resonant is to pull. And there are 2 dissonant leadership styles and 4 resonant leadership styles. So one of the resonant leadership style is something around democratic leadership, where, you know, when you have something that you need to discuss, you get the team together and you ask everybody for their opinion. You collaborate with them to get this thing done. But imagine if you did that all the time for every single decision. Imagine if you did that for some of the decisions I had to make in the police service, where, you know, we had a crazed gunman running around, or somebody running around with a knife, or we had a bomb, a suspected bomb in a housing estate. I couldn't afford at that moment in time to be democratic and collaborative all the time. So I think the real trick with leadership is to get your fluidity right. Every single one of these 6 leadership styles that Daniel Goleman talks about, and other people will have other leadership styles, is a relevant leadership style. Each will have its advantage, each will have its disadvantage, but when it's played at the right time, and that can change from moment to moment, when it's played at the right time, that's when you're in your sweet spot.
Fabulous, thank you. Absolutely. Anyone feeling brave to sort of voice their thoughts on if there can be too much collaboration? I mean, Carl has given some really good examples there.
I would just say that there can be, and I think that's one of the reasons why people sometimes are quite negative when it comes to being told they're working with other people, is because they've had bad experiences of the past, because they've been asked to collaborate when perhaps they didn't need to. Just a couple of things on it really is whether or not we're talking about the frequency of collaboration or the amount, the actual sheer volume of people involved in the collaboration. If you're talking about the latter, we need to remember that we need to keep numbers small. People's voices need to be heard. People need to feel that they are actively collaborating, not just a bystander. And that's when we need to think about how many people are we involving in that collaboration. When it comes to frequency, I think what we need to remember is it's all about risk and complexity. So the higher the complexity and the higher the risk, the more the need is to collaborate. Sometimes you just need a really talented individual. You don't need to collaborate so much. But when both of those axes, when you start going in the top there, that's when collaboration is key, depending on the complexity of the task and the risk involved. So that's just my contribution there. But yes, and I think people collaborate sometimes a little bit too quickly because perhaps it's easier. Just putting that in there because it's a bit, you know, maybe.
Brilliant. Any final thoughts on that one, Cory, before we...
Real brief. I don't want to add to that too much because I think they both nailed it. But I think too much collaboration, I think we all agree that can definitely cost you. Sometimes the answer is already apparent and we spend more time debating alternative answers. And that can lead to confusion. That can lead to us not taking the steps forward that we need to take. So I think definitely there's a time and place. Collaboration's amazing, but we don't want to do it for the sake of collaborating.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you. Thank you all. Right, I'm going to turn the ship around again now, and we're going to emphasize the benefit and impact of collaboration. We're going to start wrapping up now. 5 minutes left, and we respect everyone's time. So if you enable me to do that, thank you all for joining us. What an amazing week, and it carries on for another few days. So I want to ask each of you now, in turn, for a top tip. So let's give everyone a takeaway, a top tip in successfully implementing a collaborative leadership culture into an organisation. What would be your top tip? Carl, can we start with you perhaps? Maybe not. Carl is wrestling with a cat.
Meet Elvis. He likes to be near me all the time.
Wonderful.
My top tip, I guess it comes down to this whole concept of, if you are going to collaborate, make sure that collaboration is based on a foundation, a solid foundation of authenticity. And I know that we've talked about authenticity and trust an awful lot. I see the two as being completely intertwined. You will not build trust without being authentic, and we need to create cultures of authenticity, particularly as we have a world that is more anxious than it has been prior to COVID. I think we still have remnants of mental anxiety in the workplace now. I'm all about human-centered leadership, and the beauty of being humans is that we're also super complex. And we all bring our complexities to work. It's not that we can take off these complexities, leave them at the door place of our work, and then walk in as these superhuman beings. We are complex, and I think by being authentic and creating authentic cultures, then we can support each other, feel better, and work better.
Joe, Cory, step forward, one of you. Top tip.
I'll go first. There's the order that we spoke, wasn't it? A top tip to implement collaborative leadership culture. Because that's quite a big thing to do, actually, isn't it? If we're implementing a different culture, just generally, that tends to be quite tough. It's not going to happen overnight. My top tip would be to do it one team at a time. And I think you slowly change a culture. In fact, I had this very conversation with Meredith Belbin yesterday over a cup of tea at his home, and we're talking about culture change. Is what he loves this, and he said what you don't want to do is suddenly announce that you are changing your culture. So I would suggest get one team to do it brilliantly, and then other teams will see them doing this brilliantly, and then it will naturally go out into the organization by osmosis, and that's when you can get real culture change. But it will take time. Just do it one team at a time.
Yeah, good words. Brilliant. Cory.
Yeah, I think to tag on to what those two famous, amazing folks before me said, I think culture is not necessarily what we want it to be, and it's not necessarily what we say it is. It's what other people believe it to actually be, and that comes from us first. I think we have to be, as leaders, unafraid to be vulnerable in many different ways. But more importantly, the greatest leader is not necessarily the one that does the greatest things. The greatest leaders are the ones that help and get other people to do great things. That's where you create a culture that's real. One more time for you, Joe, from the walls to the halls, and that has unlimited growth potential.
Fantastic. Thank you, everybody. That's really, really insightful. I've really enjoyed listening to you all today. Cole, your emphasis on trust has been really underlined things that I think we all knew, but to have that really reinforced again is fantastic. And it feels almost like we should be plugging the Institute's research into the Index of Leadership Trust at this point. So if you haven't already read it, pop to the website and you can download that report. But yeah, Joe and Cory, what you're saying about culture, we don't dictate culture. Culture is what happens around us. And so actually that taking it one team at a time and letting it naturally develop really does seem like a wonderfully sensible idea. So all that's left now for me is to give our appreciation to all of you guests, and thank you for joining us today for this conversation. Thank you to everybody that's taken the time to listen to us this afternoon. This has been an incredible gathering. We hope you found the session to be filled with valuable insights and thought-provoking discussions. And let's just keep the momentum of the International Leadership Week going, so you can continue the conversation on social media using that hashtag ILW24. So finally, once again, thank you to all of you for being here today. Your presence has truly made this event a memorable one. So thank you.